I'm going to show you how you can create scalable automated webinars using Everwebinar. This is a step-by-step full tutorial. Hi everyone, it's Kevin from Solopreneur. And if you're watching this video, you know about the power of webinars. Webinars are probably the #1 way to sell today in digital marketing and really make a connection with your audience. Now, the only challenge with webinars is that sometimes they are not scalable, because if you are doing multiple webinars a week and you're the one running them, it can become a drain, and there are only so many hours in the day. So while they are super powerful, how do you actually make them scalable? And especially, what if people want to attend those webinars at different times? You're selling globally and they can't actually attend at the very specific time you're running it. You don't want to be stuck on your desk doing 10 webinars a day. The people at Webinar Jam, at Kartra, they've actually come up with a solution to this, and that solution is Everwebinar. And what Everwebinar is a tool that lets you run webinars at scale that look live. So those webinar sessions that you've already done, you can take those and it's going to mimic the entire experience of being a live webinar, and your audience members really won't know that it's not live. And so in this video, I'm going to show you step by step how to use this really awesome tool and how it all works. Okay, so here we are in the Everwebinar backend. Now, if you also have Webinar Jam, you can access that pretty easily by clicking that link here. But this tutorial is all about Everwebinar, so I'm going to keep it to that. So here on the left-hand side, you have home, my webinars, my analytics, and my registrants. Pretty self-explanatory there. And if you click on profile, you also can edit your profile. You have some settings, you have your billing, and you have integrations, and you can integrate Everwebinar with a number of different tools. I have a whole video on how to integrate it with Kartra if you want to use more of the advanced landing pages and email automation. If you also have Kartra, you can check the video down below, but certainly not required. And of course, you can also integrate with other autoresponders or Zapier for any other integration you need. But let's jump right into how to create a webinar. So when we go to add webinar, we can see here that we're immediately taken to the wizard. So you have two options here. So if you already have the webinar recorded and you've kind of crafted this perfect video and you haven't done it, say, as a live webinar perhaps. So let's say you actually create this in your video editing tool, or you even have like a YouTube video that you'd like to use. So let's say you ran on YouTube, you can just put the URL here and you just set the right duration of the video. So that's option one. So the second option is actually just to take one of your Webinar Jam sessions you've run. Let's say you did a really good session and you want to just take that one and automate it. Then you can just choose that webinar and which session and then use that. But I'm not going to assume that everyone here has Webinar Jam, so we're just going to go through this option. So you can do, as you can see here, MP4, YouTube, or Vimeo Pro. You just need to get a URL for that. Again, if you're using Kartra, you can upload it in any of those systems, but let's just do YouTube to keep it simple, especially because it's a free solution. And you just have to make sure that you match the right times on this. So this video is 10:36. So just make sure you do that correctly. So the next thing we're going to do here is basic settings. So you're going to name it. This is a private title, so this is for your own organization. Now this is the public one, so we just call it test example, but obviously have a more enticing title than that. And this is your description. So this is really going to be the pitch for your webinar. You can also upload a thumbnail here. You can see the dimensions right there. Pretty self-explanatory. You can actually set the language. I have it here on English. Now, this is a really awesome feature. So what this is actually a marketplace where you can have your webinar displayed for free. When I say free, no additional charge. And this is just a great way to just get more viewership, right? And you can see all the different topics people do. And so I highly recommend, if it's a webinar that you do want more exposure for, if it's not a private session for your existing audience, to include it in here. And what you would do is you would select your category and go through that. But again, just going to keep this simple here, the basic example, so I won't have it on there, but know that it is a great option. And then lastly, we're going to go to presenter. So by default, you are the presenter, but you can add more presenters here, and you can add their email address. You can add them as a presenter or a moderator, and the moderator will just have back-end access and they won't actually be doing things. But for the sake of simplicity, I won't add anyone else, and let's just keep it at one presenter. Okay, so the next thing we're in is the schedules, and this is probably one of the most important functions in Everwebinar. Now you can do on, which means it only happens once. So if you just want to run this live webinar automated once, then you can do that. But most people are going to want to do the every. So let's say you want every Monday at 1 p.m. in the user's own time zone, they can do this webinar. Then you obviously might want to add multiple. Also at Tuesday at 3 a.m. Let's say you want a different time zone for a different audience, it runs. So you can just set up all the times that you want this webinar to run. Now, the other option is you can also do a on-demand webinar. And what this will let them do is they'll be able to watch the replay immediately without having to wait for the next available session. But because you're being transparent that this is a replay, it's not going to display any rolling chat feed because they'll be aware that it's a replay. So let's just keep this off for now. The next thing you can do is allow late attendance, which is awesome. So let's just say they missed the webinar by 15 minutes. So instead of them having to wait for the next day, they can attend late and it'll actually fast forward from the time. So if they joined at 1:15, it'll just seem like when they come in, it'll be playing at the 15-minute mark, which is really cool. I would enable that. Now, this is one of the most important features and most powerful features. So now this is that feature where the person arrives and serendipitously, the next webinar is starting in 8 minutes. They're like, wow, I caught the webinar. And the way this works is basically you just have the system set it up so that it just runs every 15 minutes. So it just seems there's going to be a timer that the person is always just in time for the webinar. So this is probably the most powerful way to do it because people are in the moment, right? So let's just say they download your e-guide and then down the thank you page, there's the webinar and the webinar starting in 10 minutes. They're going to stick around for that because they're already engaged. But tomorrow, something else might take their attention away. So this is really, really important and really powerful. And you can actually have it so that there are no night schedules, right? No one should be running webinars from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. And if it's like a 3 a.m. webinar, maybe that might be a little suspect. But I'll leave that up to you. Maybe you want to have that off, but it is a tool there if you want to work in a single time zone. And right here, when they register, they can see the next available schedules. You can display that. You have different options. The next thing you can do is you can actually block short-term registrations. Let's say you want them to go through an email sequence for some reason before attending. Now, personally, I don't really see a lot of reasons to ever block anyone from attending your webinar, but that option is there for a very specific use case. If you need it, you can also block certain holidays, obviously, if you don't want to run it on certain holidays. But let us just confirm it there. The next thing you can do is your registration page design. So if you click on preview, you have various options and you can just go through that. And to customize it, really, it's like any WYSIWYG editor you've ever used. You just click on the pencil, you change this, and you just kind of go through it. And then when you're ready, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because it's pretty much everything you've ever seen. So there's also this little section here. And this is that thing I was just talking about. If you set that 15-minute thing up, it'll always be counting down and you'll see that there. But essentially, when you're done, you just go save and exit. You can preview it too, but I'm just going to go save and exit. And then you've chosen your registration page there. One other thing I'll mention is you can do split testing. And what that'll do is you'll create two variants of your landing page. You can then assign, say, 50-50 to each variant, and then you can see which has a higher registration rate. Again, a more advanced marketing function, but it's awesome that it's built in. The next thing here is you can actually change the form design. So you can have just different templates here. I'll just keep the existing one. And again, you can just preview them. You can also customize the fields a bit. So maybe in your CRM, you want to also have last name. So you can just add that in here. Also, maybe you want to charge for this webinar rather than have it be free. So the default is it's free and you can actually charge, but Everwebinar doesn't have a built-in payment processor. So the way this works, I'm just going to explain it at a high level because there's so many different ways to do this, but I'm just going to explain it for you. And once I do, it'll be pretty clear how to do this. So what you do is, let's say you're charging $100 for this webinar. Now, what you do is you have them go to the checkout page. So this would be the checkout page in your product gateway. So if you're using Kartra, that would be there, or any other system really. And so this is where they would go through their payment. Now, within that system, what you would do is you would set the thank you page to be this. And so that's how Everwebinar is going to know that this product was purchased and that they should be allowed in. So you might be wondering, if someone just has this URL, can they just enter the webinar? Yes, they can. So make sure you don't share this publicly anywhere. Now, for the sake of simplicity, I'm going to keep this off. Also, you can password protect the webinar. Now, this is also a good idea if you are making people pay for the webinar. Maybe you have a master password you email them. So in case anyone gets that URL, there's that additional redundancy that they can't actually access it. You could make it even more secure where everyone gets a unique password and the system will generate that. But again, let's keep it simple here. Assume you're doing a top of the funnel webinar, no passwords, no payments. So the next thing you can do is set your email gateway. Let's just go with the Everwebinar mail. But if you have a more advanced setup here, you can use your own SMT gateway, or you can use your own autoresponder if you're using something like Kartra or any of the systems. Again, I have a video down below on how you can do that with Kartra, but certainly not required. You can use Everwebinar's built-in system. And then what you do once you have that set up is you can do your confirmation emails and your reminders and your post follow-ups. So you can see here, as soon as someone signs up, they get all of this dynamic information sent to them. Then if you'd like, you can add more reminders. Maybe you want to send them something at 24 hours in advance, maybe 10 hours in advance. You can create as many as you like. Then automatically they'll do the 15-minute. You can edit these. And of course, the post-webinar follow-up is super important. You might want to send them a replay, so you can see a replay link. And of course, you might want to make that drip sequence to sell them the next thing in your customer journey, or you want to follow up with them. So lots of different things you want to do here, but make sure you configure your post configuration as well. The next thing is, again, you can do an autoresponder. Talked about this a moment ago, and there's a video on how to do this with Kartra. And of course, there are so many other systems out there. I can't make a tutorial for everything, but there is some good documentation. And so if you do need this, you can do it, but it's certainly not required. And likewise, you can do some third-party tracking if you're a little bit more advanced as a marketer, but again, not required, and I won't go through that. Then you can actually configure your thank you page. So you can see there's the default confirmation page right here, but if you have your own system, you can create your own confirmation page with different things. Again, won't go through that. If you have a landing page builder, Kartra, whatever else, you can use that. Next thing is you can actually have a survey for your registrants, which is kind of interesting. If you maybe want to seed multiple topics, so let's say you do a registration and you want to get some information from them, or you want to know what to do as the next session, you can do that, but I'm just going to keep that off. But it is a handy feature if for whatever reason you need it. And lastly, you can customize that thank you page. They do actually have some templates really there, and it's the same process I just showed you. You would go through the customization, but again, for simplicity's sake, I will keep the existing landing page. Now, you can also change the template for the countdown timer, which is the thing there. So choose it to match your brand. You can have the room design, choose it to match your brand. Now, you can also have it so that there's a poll that shows up at a specific stamp during the video, and you can have real-time data from a recorded webinar. So you can have that person, even though it's an automated webinar, you can still mine them for information or poll information. So that's something you can do, and it's pretty cool. Let's just keep that off for now. Now, the live chat box, right? This is really, really, really important. So you can just turn it off. You can enable live chat, and this is actually one of the most important things. You can actually have it so that people, you can enter a name like Billy, and Billy's actually just an attendee, and they ask a question, hello, and then what happens is that at this time, and then you responded. So you could write this whole elaborate script, again, because you only have to do this webinar once, and you can automate it to make it seem like there's really some engagement going on, and to make it seem like a live webinar. I really recommend you do this, and you can do a whole CSV, so you don't have to build it all in here and import it. So you can write out that entire script to make it seem like it's a real webinar. The other thing you can do is you can just have questions, and then they'll just be forwarded to you to answer later. But I really recommend you do this feature. I'll disable it for now for simplicity's sake, but really important. The next thing you can do is throughout the video, you could actually have a highlighted comment. So you can just have like at 10 minutes, someone says, I really love the product, or I just bought this, it's awesome, right? So it's just going to have that come up in the webinar, and it's going to be really engaging. But again, Won't do that. You can also have a product offer show up right within the webinar. Of course, I recommend this for sales, right? So you can see here, you can configure your offer, a headline, you can have an image, a text, everything. This is actually the link to your shopping cart to actually buy the thing. So it's not hosted within Everwebinar. So whatever system you're using to host that, you can see how long it runs. You can actually have an expiration, like it's only 5 minutes, and you can have that line up with this. So there's that urgency there, really cool opportunity to sell right within your webinar. You can actually have at a specific time, you can have them go to a different website at the end of your event maybe. So it's like a call to action. Everyone gets taken to your sales page to check out and buy some other stuff. You can have sticky messages. So you can have, for example, a coupon or some sort of URL throughout the entire webinar that you want them to be able to take advantage of, special offer maybe. And this is another really cool feature. I really like the dynamic attendees. So if you do 100 attendees, what it's not going to do, it's not just going to show 100 attendees the whole time, right? Nobody's going to believe that. So it's going to do this, right? So it's going to go, let's say you have 100, it's going to, like when they start the webinar, it's going to go 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Then it's going to peak at 100 and then it'll start to drop off to make it seem like it's a real webinar rather than going 100 attendees like this, right? That's not realistic. So this is a really cool feature. Now, this is another amazing feature and it's so sneaky and it's hilarious. So you can actually have it, let's say at the 5-minute mark, rapid funnel template bot. So you can see at the 5-minute mark, it's going to pop that up. Imagine if you have like 5 of these because you put up the offer and then you just see people buying the thing within the webinar. Human nature is that it's going to be like, this is a really good offer. All these other people are buying it. I should do it. It's just human nature to be a follower. And you can also have a specific handout during the video and you can configure it, especially if you need to do that while the video is going on. So if you want to send them a upload or some sort of handout at a specific time, you can do that. And I won't do that right now. Now, recording the webinar session of a recorded session is kind of weird, but you could record the webinar if you want. Most people probably leave this off because it's already a pre-recorded webinar, but it's there for whatever reason. And then we are finished and we're going to go to our dashboard. And then once that's done, you can then see your analytics as it runs. All sessions, let's say, all time, go. Now, of course, this was a test I just made, so there's no data, but you can get the sense of what kind of stuff you'll see. You see your conversion rate, you'll see what the attendance was, the replay, you'll see monetization here, notifications, all of that. You'll get all of that data. You'll get your list of registrants. Again, I don't have one because I just literally created this as a test for you all, so you won't see that, but you just get a sense. Obviously, you can do segmentation, who attended, who didn't, and you know what they did, and if they came at a specific timestamp, which is really important because let's say they left before 5 minutes and the webinar is an hour long, those aren't really good leads. But if they stayed to the end, then those are probably your hotter leads as an example. So really good way to segment the data. Now, finally, I want to show you the webinar experience. So once you create your webinar, you just go to your links and you can just simply see everything right there. So this is your registration page you created. So this is what you'll be marketing and you'll see, oh, look, the webinar starts in 9 minutes. Wow, look at that. I'm just in time. So that was that feature we just enabled and you can see how powerful that is. And just to mention, you can actually embed this if you want in another website. I won't go through that. And you can also give a direct link to the room if you don't want someone to have to go through the registration. Maybe it's an employee, maybe it's a friend of yours, maybe someone's having technical issues. You want to skip the whole process. So there's always that option, but most people obviously are going to want people to go through the registration as that's the whole point of it. Now, presenters, they get a control panel. So this is amazing because you are obviously not live. However, you can be live if you want. So you can actually reply live to your pre-recorded webinar. So you can interject some elements. Let's just say you are having this crazy replay where it's like, okay, look, 200 people are live on this replay. Let me make sure I maximize this replay by jumping in, right? And you can start answering questions and whatnot. So pretty cool. And there really isn't much administration, as you can see, because it's meant to be automated, so you don't have to be there. So this is totally optional, right? This is totally optional. You don't even have to be here, but it's there if you want to be a presenter. And again, you're not really a presenter because you're more of a moderator, and it's completely optional. And there's the replay, which for whatever reason you wanted to watch back how many people actually attended that session. You can do that if you'd like. And I'll show you what the live room looks like. So this is the example experience that the person would be getting. Or webinar jam. So of course I just added a random YouTube video. So we're going to cover everything. I'm going to pause it there. But really this is what they'd been, and I've disabled chat for this event. But essentially they'd be in here and they'd be watching the webinar. They'd be seeing the thing scrolling. They'd be seeing your offers, and they would have no idea that it's not a live chat. And if you really wanted to be even more attentive to it, you could be in the background as a moderator still replying to chats if you want. But again, you don't have to do that. So I went through that pretty quickly, and really that was the high-level tutorial of how to get an automated webinar in Everwebinar going really quickly. Now, there are some really small nuanced tricks that I didn't cover because of course I can't cover everything. So I encourage you, if you haven't tried the platform already, to click the link in the description down below to get a 14-day trial. That's what's really going to help you evaluate the tool and really follow along in this tutorial. Also, if you found this video helpful, give me a like, consider subscribing to the channel for more Everwebinar and Webinar Jam content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.